analog to digital. The kids today that you were talking about, Susanna and John. Okay.
Okay, fantastic.
Good. They're digital natives. Their brains are wired differently. Their brains are wired in a and so
But don't you think we could rewire our brains?
I do.
I think we can.
Yep.
I think we do that all the time.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to the plug board and making that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Caroline, tell me, what do you tell people what Valentine HR is and what they do? Not they do, what you do.
What we do. We are excitingly on the forefront of how organizations, the people within those organizations, interact with each other. And that's really what it's about.
Right.
It's about, as we move more and more into understanding how humans interact with each other and how you get successful collaborations and successful organizations to all move to the same goal and recognize that goal, whether that be making a beautiful purse, writing software, curing a disease, doesn't matter, whatever that is. It's about how do we bring these people together? How do we get them to work together successfully to reach that goal? And that's really what HR is about.
Yes.
It's about what are those supports that are needed? How do we need to
Human
pay?
resources.
Right. How do we need to motivate those people? How do we need to pay them, reward them? How do we need to support them in the way? What are the tools they're missing that they need in order to be successful to reach this goal?
Now, large companies can have this, but smaller and medium-sized companies that you serve don't have this. So that's what you chose to be your niche?
Well, I would say I would say that one of the reasons why they don't have it is that there's not an understanding that that is necessary in the workplace, or they like to think that, oh, well, we can do that ourselves.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Sure,
right?
we can do it.
Well, and sometimes they can be successful if they've got some really great leaders who've maybe been trained somewhere else and come in with it. But yes, and the other part about this is employment law, ways in which people are interested in the workplace, changing all the time. And so you've got to keep up with all of the new compliance and laws, things like that. And then additionally, you have to keep up with what are the new ways in which people are looking and seeking to communicate with each other. So where is HR in understanding how artificial intelligence and just software in general, how it can help improve the employee experience? How can it improve the candidate experience? How can it help groups of people move forward to reach a goal, whatever that goal is? And so HR is always changing, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I love it, is that I am a person who embraces change. Love it. And is it easy? No. Do I hate when my phone updates and stuff's in a new place? Of course. It drives me crazy initially, right? But then, okay, it's change. You're rewiring your brain. You're creating new synapses, links and things like that, so that you can actually say, okay, my brain is still functioning and working and moving forward, and I'm accepting change because the only constant is change.
Yes.
And as an organization, you have to be adept at managing change. Otherwise, you'll end up Kodak. Do you want to be Kodak? You want to be Canon? You want to be Canon, right?
Exactly.
Right? So how do you create a group of people who are comfortable with change? Not change for change's sake, just to on board, but can be comfortable understanding change is going to happen. We got to accept it. We got to move forward. It's good for us. How do we communicate it? And how do we create an environment where our employees have the tools to handle that?
That's
really
wonderful.
what strategic HR is. That's really what it's about, is how do we go find these tools? Okay, you're in charge of that. Go do that. And that's what we do for organizations, small and large, right? Small to mid-size, and organizations of all kinds. So for-profits, nonprofits, startups of all kinds, governmental agencies even. Yeah.
In creating a culture, can you talk about some of the elements of creating a culture of communication and collaboration that you're seeing and that you're working with your groups?
Absolutely. I am concerned sometimes that the word culture is thrown around.
Yeah,
and
could you help?
misused.
Could you help
That
me?
it's thrown around and misused. Really, what I would like everyone to stop using the word culture and start using the words vision and values. Because that's really what it comes down to is there's a leader who has a vision, and there is the way to get there. And the way to get there involves the values, the agreements we have with each other about how we're going to behave and the decisions we're going to make as we're getting to the realization of that vision.
Beautiful.
That's really it.
So where do you start? I mean, you know that Robert Fulghum quote, don't worry that your children aren't listening to you. Worry that they're always watching you.
Watching you, yes.
All the time. So the leaders have to model the behavior that they wish to see. They want transparency? How about being transparent?
It's tough. It's scary. When you're the leader and you have an idea and you're starting an organization, or you've been brought into an organization that needs to get turned around or grown or whatever that those goals are, whatever it is from here to here you're trying to achieve, it's really scary. And so you can easily fall into a trap if no one's holding you accountable, if no one's pushing you. You can, as a leader, you can easily fall into a trap of getting stuck in your revolutions.
Yeah.
Your bike and whatever gear it's
Exactly.
in. You know, you can easy to get stuck in that. And so it's about obviously self-awareness first. It's about that understanding of where am I in my understanding of how I'm going to handle it for myself first. I'll give you an example around diversity.
Please.
We get requests, phone calls, emails from leaders saying, you know, we want to create a more diverse company. And, you know, how do we go about doing that? You know, where do we go seek out people who are more diverse? And sometimes those requests are around the more typical, generic versions we think of diversity. It's, you know, how we look, you know, what gender are we, how old are we, what is the color of our skin, things like that. And we try to move it past that into diversity of thought as quickly as possible. But on the way, the very first question I ask of the leader is, tell me a little bit about the diversity in your world, in your personal world, in how you see it. Because if you are actively seeking out a more diverse world from the thoughts that people have, you know, the concepts that they're bringing to the table, maybe they have challenged in a way of saying we can do this differently and maybe better. Are you open to all of those things? Are you open to seeing people differently? Do I think that blind resumes are a way to deal with that? No, not necessarily, because I've seen leaders say, oh, I don't like people who went to that university. That university isn't very good at this, that, whatever. You know, so I don't think even a blind resume isn't going to help you get past this concept of what someone might look like or behave or how they might choose to behave. So it's around really saying, how open am I first, and how am I going to model this behavior of being open to seeing someone might have another idea. The only dumb question is one that you don't ask. If you're working in a creative field, let's say you're in advertising, and you're trying to get some ideas about a new concept for a client, there's no bad answers, right? Everyone says no judging. Any all possible idea goes on the whiteboard, and we stick it up there, and we're just open. In improv, right, we talk about yes and. You accept what it is, you say yes and you build on it so that you're not constantly saying no and creating negativity. And most leaders hate the word no anyway. They don't like being told no. So they really need to understand how, you know, maybe they should take their own advice around that piece. But again, to wrap it up, I would say it's about first yourself. And then secondly, okay, now can I clearly articulate our vision of what we're trying to achieve? And can I articulate our values? And are we practicing them? Because values on the wall, values on a grocery bag are not real values. It's the practices. Policies are stagnant. They're things that we just kind of put somewhere and we practice them. The practices are what the realities are. And so how are we supporting all of the employees when they are practicing the values?
So how? So give me an example. Take me through a journey that you can of one of the people that you're doing on how they did that and
around
around values and getting it from that board that's up on the wall that those things that we see, hang in there, baby, let's do this together, let's get it into a practical example of the journey, because it's
Absolutely.
always harder than,
Right, an easy one is ethics. That's a very easy one. Everyone says they want to be ethical.
Yep.
Every single person does. Every organization that has a list of values will use this thing around doing it the right way, doing it ethically, being honest, all of that. Well, you're looking at the way that it's practiced every day, and you're looking at the way that you, even in the difficult times, you choose to do what's right. You choose to follow the ethical path.
mm-hmm.
And an easy place where that can be a struggle is in sales. And are you rewarding people for the choices they're making that are more ethical? Or are you rewarding them for behavior, and are you pushing them towards, well, you're going to make more money if you do this way?
Yeah.
So, for example, say that you're working in a sales role and you're supposed to add so many new contacts into the contact database every week.
Right.
And let's say a couple of folks that are in this sales roles go to the sales manager and say, there's actually not enough contacts in the world for us to put enough in here for this to be real. And the sales manager's answer is, well, but my bonus is based on how many of these contacts you put in here.
Those are the deliverables.
Right. So I need you to go find this, work twice as hard, qualify twice as many potential customers, do what you have to do, basically, to get this done. And those sales folks return to their desks and say, I see no other way than for us to make it up.
Yep.
And then they're making up contacts.
Yep.
And it's not real. And it is obviously a departure from what's ethical. And the reason being is because the way the organization has not reviewed the objectives and the goals, the way that the sales manager didn't feel comfortable for some reason going to a higher up person in the organization to say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't right. This is, we're not going to get there. And this example that I've actually just discussed with you is the Wells Fargo scandal. That's what it is.
$3 billion
That's exactly what it is.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of saying Wells Fargo at the beginning, I said at the end here, but that is exactly what that is creating an environment where greed and this desire to reach really unachievable goals that just don't exist, and to cook the books and fix the numbers and all of that.
Yeah.
Because you're not realistic about what is actually achievable.
In the difficult conversations, when you talk to executives and when you talk to the teams about how they create a culture, one of the things that you do, you do a blog posts over, and so you do these letters, and these letters to, which I love on ValentineHR.com.
Oh, thank you.
And one of the things that you were talking about that really that intrigued me so much was the love words.
Love languages.
Love language,
yes,
and how the value of love language that can be installed. Can you talk about that, because that really fascinates me, about the power of encouragement that can actually be something that can connect us to purpose.
Certainly, we're human. We're human in our personal relationships, and we're human in our professional relationships. And so I think there's a lot of behaviors that we want to encourage that are true for everyone. And so I took this concept, this theory, this sort of practice that the 5 love languages brings to personal relationships, and I brought it into the professional world, because I think it's the same kind of having respect for other people. So basic level of respect, basic level of, concern that we would have for just our fellow human. But when we're working in the workplace, we are around these folks so many hours a day, oftentimes more than we are with our personal relationships and our families and our friends. And so it's going to happen. This is why, one of the reasons why people turn to HR and go, I can't get along with somebody, right? Mm-hmm. I'm having some struggles in the workplace with them. We're butting heads. Just the same way that, you do sometimes in your personal life. So what the theory of the love languages is that everyone likes to be shown that they are appreciated, that they are cared for in different ways.
Yep.
And those are 5 ways that this gentleman that wrote the book has identified. And what I've done is just said, okay, let's look at that from from a perspective of in the workplace. Some people know that they are loved when you reaffirm them, when you use words of affirmation and you say, thank you for this, when you say, I appreciate you doing that. I recognize that this is what you're doing.
Yep. And reward the effort, because you're actually saying that I appreciate what you, not just what the result that you have gotten, but the effort that you're giving.
Yeah, I'm acknowledging, but it's also a communication. Words of affirmation are words, so it's about communicating. Yes. And so when anyone asks myself or any of our associates, what's the one thing we can do in our organization to change our culture? I say the same thing. Communication. It's the C word. Yeah. Communicate, communicate, communicate. And the ways in which you're communicating and how you're communicating and what you're communicating. But that is it. Let's just coalesce this all down to this and say, how do we change how we're communicating? And you will, over time, completely see a change. I'll give you an example of a very well-known international manufacturing mining company that had just abysmal. I mean, their value was just going down the tubes, right? Just all the way down the tubes. And they were desperate. They hired a new CEO. He came in and he presented to the board after several months that his focus was going to be on safety. And they were like, of all the things that we need to do, what is this? So every meeting he went to, okay, what are we doing about safety? How, okay, so we've got this identified, no. All of a sudden they began to see they were doing better and better. Returns were there, their revenue was there, their profit margin was increasing, and it became a glorious turnaround story for this organization because he focusing on safety? Yes, which was respect for employees and respect for the customer, respect for the environment, respect for all the vendors. But it was also safety involved the need for communication, and involved the absolute need for communication, and it also required documentation. Okay, we're all going to communicate it, we're going to agree on it, we're going to document it, we're going to have it, and this is how we're going to move forward in following the agreement we've kept with each other. That was it. Done.
But when I think of great project management, it's exactly those steps.
Yes, absolutely. It's a plan. It's having a plan and executing on the plan. And if the plan needs to change, if there's trouble in the plan,
there's trouble.
Right.
Right.
You're so thank you. You're so right. Because there's going to be, right? And you have to change the plan or pivot or whatever you want to call it. Then you create an environment where that's okay to do. So that you don't have folks going, wait a minute, this is going off track. And then before you know it, it's fallen off the edge of the cliff because someone didn't want to hear or say or see that there was a problem.
Bring it early, bring it often, bring it up, work it through.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's difficult sometimes when you really want to hold on to your vision. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you really want to hold on, no, this is how I know, this is the way, this is the only way. It can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah. I agree, and because I think of that, and that was the way 3 months ago. It's no longer the way today. Those things are happening. The rate of change and the rate, it requires us to revisit.
Absolutely, and being comfortable with change. That, as I would say, is the other piece in where human resources is really effective, is around identifying the tools that organizations and people need to be comfortable with change. There's positive change that still you have an emotional response to. We're not robots. We're going to have emotional responses, and we cannot deny our emotions because then it just blows up later. Yeah. We've got to accept them and say, okay, how do I manage them? I mean, this is emotional intelligence. I've got to identify my emotions, and then how do I manage them successfully to get me where I need to go? Well, how do organizations do that? One of my favorite little examples that I have around the importance of communication and how it can, if you don't communicate, how it does result in a lot of emotional responses from people. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those folks, if I'm in a long line and everyone's like, what's going on? What do you think is going on? I don't know what's going on. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to volunteer. Why don't we go to the front of the line and find out and then come back and tell everybody else? And so, if you've ever stayed in a long line, I don't care.
Absolutely.
If you could be the CEO of a company, you could be the leader of a nonprofit organization. You could be a consultant. Working with an organization of 7 employees. when you don't know what's going on and you're stuck on a plane and you don't,
Yeah.
they're not telling you what's happening, or you're in this long line and you're like, is there any food left if I get to the front of the line? All of that. You want to know what's going on. And when you don't know what's going on, your little brain goes,
I'm going to make it up. I am going to put,
well, your worst fears comes out. What happens is your fears. The fear of falling out of the sky, the fear of there being a terrorist on the plane, the fear, all of that, because
I mean, you say that, but it's the same thing in a workplace, right? I mean,
and next thing you know, people are no longer productive. They're not actually focusing on getting their jobs done. They're focusing on saving their jobs and or knowing what's happened to prepare for what might happen later. You've basically cut the rug, pull the rug out from underneath their security needs. And if people have their security needs aren't met, or if they're afraid that their security needs may not be met in the future,
Yep.
how can they ever focus on their jobs and get it done?
Exactly.
You've just dropped productivity, forget it. So how do you communicate to everyone in a way? Does that mean that you just have a complete open door on everything? No, not necessarily. But it means that you are striving to have the kinds of back and forth communication that needs to happen, so that you've got information that's coming from all of your folks here, it's moving up, information that's here that needs to be disseminated is moving down. And how do you ensure that that actually happens? You've got to train everyone in between, every layer. Otherwise, you end up with red truck and blue car. So you've got to be real clear. This is the message. This is how we're going to communicate that message. You can never over communicate.
And we have to revisit the transparency over and over and over again to see how we're doing it. So this isn't a one-off. It's like being in a relationship. Nobody has a relationship that sits there and says, "Oh, okay, well, we're married and that's the last work we have to do."
And I love you. Okay, great. And I keep meaning that for the next 25 years. I'm never going to tell you again. I'm never going to tell you words I love you again, ever. I mean, that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. And you work on it, and it
Right.
requires the transparency to be, because that's one this idea of that was back during my time. There was this idea that we had a business persona and we have a personal persona, and the idea of that. Well, it's not personal. It's business. I feel like it's all one thing, and that it is both. Certainly we have business objectives, but we also have personal objectives when we're at home, when we have allowing me to be the same person as much as possible, as far as my personality is concerned, at home or at work, is a big deal for me.
I think being authentic is important. I think it's very important. Also, too, when you are authentic, you're not hiding the help you need. Do you know what I'm saying? Like don't be, and that's a place where a manager or a leader can be so supportive and effective. Is you're not perfect. It's okay. When you need help, please ask for it. Don't Lone Ranger this. If you create an environment where, oh no, if you ask for help, you're weak, you're not very intelligent, you're clearly not up for the job, people are going to hide the fact that they need help. And then guess what? Your product is broken. And then all of a sudden you're standing there as the leader going, why is my product or my service broken? Why are we not more successful? Because you don't want to hear what's really happening or see, or have people articulate what's really happening out there. And so that's why you want to have a place where it's like, I can be authentically me. If I've got a problem, I'm going to ask for help. Asking for help is rewarded, not penalized. And therefore, we're going to get where we need to go much better. And investing in training. I don't know what happened, why all of a sudden that just got cut out of the budget of every major corporation, and all of a sudden everyone became player coaches, and we didn't invest in people anymore, and we just wanted them to come as they were, and you must already have all of this in your brain. We're seeing that pendulum swing back. We're seeing major organizations of all kinds, for-profit and nonprofit and government agencies as well. We're seeing them come in and go, we've got to invest in training.
Yes.
We've got to invest in our people, because they're not loyal to us anymore. They're leaving us. How do we get them to stay? Well, all the same ways we always did. Create career paths, create training programs, reward them in ways that they want to be rewarded. And that goes back to, again, the love languages, right?
Yeah.
Is it quality time? Is it gifts? Is it acts of service? Is it ways in which we can help folks in the workplace? Is it us having realistic work schedules? I mean, no one wants to work in an environment where you haven't spent time figuring out that this one department, the workload they've been given, they're all working 70 hours a week, and the workload that this department's been given is more like 20 or 30 hours a week, and therefore, why aren't these departments getting along? Why can't they get along with each other? What's happening? These people are just silly, immature people. What's wrong with them? It's about investing in saying, okay, have we created an environment where people can be successful with each other?
One of the things that I'm interested in, that I'm interested in is that how do we know when we're at the red line? I ask the executives how do you know that your people are approaching that red line or they're in that red line? Because they may not be telling you that. They may not be letting you know we're losing efficiency because the workload's too high.
On an individual basis or on a team
Both,
basis?
yeah.
Both, okay. So I would first say, I just had a conversation, what is this, Saturday? I just had a conversation yesterday with a potential new client, and the executive acknowledged that the person in the HR role was overwhelmed and had too much on their plate.
Yeah.
And how is it that he saw that that was the case for the HR and the person in that role? Was that person was no longer able to think strategically. That person didn't have the space to think strategically. They were reacting all the time, and it was whack-a-mole, and it was putting out fires. And there was no more planning. It was only executing in an emergency situation. When you as a leader have folks that are in charge of different departments, when they are no longer able to take a step back and see the forest for the trees and be able to say, well, this plan isn't working, we better realign it and realign our resources. If they're just like, oh, I'm in here in the trenches and we're just trying to save this burning building, and and we're not being very efficient about doing that either, that's a place. So red line comes when you no longer have that space to be able to take a step back and evaluate. That's the continuous improvement cycle, is the ability to say, okay, plan, execute, come back, reevaluate, how are we doing, push it forward. Having time to plan, execute's a big piece of it, but then come back, do a postmortem, come back, evaluate, how can we make that better, and try and attempt to do that. If your folks can no longer do that, if they have no space in the workplace to do that, then they're redlined.
Can peace of mind be part of continuous improvement? To be able to say, I know that we are continuously improving because my team has a greater sense of peace of mind and purpose, and that can be a part of that. Because whenever I hear the words continuous improvement, we've got to work harder with less resources.
Oh no! When I think continuous improvement, what I mean is work smarter with different resources. That's what I mean when I talk about continuous improvement. Is okay, let's work smarter, not harder, ever. And let's get better at this to realign our resources in ways that really do make sense.
Oh, God, that's wonderful.
For us. That creates peace of mind. But also, too, peace of mind comes from confidence that whatever gets thrown at you, you're going to be able to figure out, either individually or as a team, how to solve that problem. And if a leader has that confidence of, we're going to be able to figure this out.
You bet.
We've got the resources. We're all smart enough here. We've all understand the resources that we have, either within our group or a way to be able to find an outside resource we can pull in, at certain times and places to help us. So peace of mind really comes from whatever's going to hit us, we can handle it.
That's wonderful. And so when you look for, you have a team of consultants that work out there. When you look on, what are the qualities you look for in one of your people? How do you vet them, and how do you get them to get the vision of Valentine HR?
Yeah. The number one attribute that determines the success of a consultant, I think in any role, is self-awareness.
Yeah.
So it's about self-awareness.
Are we working on ourselves?
Well, it's about understanding where we are in our path. So I come in with these tools. I come in with this knowledge. I understand what I want to gain. I understand how much I have the tools that I need to be successful with clients, where I need to say, hey, I need to partner with you on this, or I'm going to check in with you on that. And what is it I'm still lacking that I need to learn? So we're not looking for folks that are experts in everything at all. We're looking for folks, though, that do want to lifelong learn. So that would be the second attribute we're looking for, is self-awareness and then lifelong learning. Just this, the joy of learning.
Yeah.
And with human resource, with employment law, with artificial intelligence, with changing dynamics. I mean, we've got our first tech company, that, or maybe not the first one, but it's the first one that successfully just voted themselves a union. I mean, we're in a brave new world, right? I mean, is this a harbinger of the future? Is this an outlier? What is this? We don't know.
What is it?
But let's deal with it. Let's accept it and go, what do we need to learn in order to understand how to better serve companies and the people that are in them?
Wouldn't it be wonderful, though, Caroline, if a union could mean that word, that we are united, and that the united means that management is welcome and it's a part of the conversation, rather than it being this adversarial.
Well, again, there's always reasons why an organization and the people that are in it, why those employees would choose to form a more formal relationship.
Yeah.
Why they would, unions are really more formal relationship, and this is the rules we're going to operate under, or CBA we're going to operate under. And why does that happen? So the first thing I always ask is why.
Yeah.
Why do we want to do this? Well, we got to fire this person. Okay, why? Okay, we got to hire 15 people. Okay, why? Well, we got to change our benefits. Okay, why? Tell me why.
The next 10 hours I could talk to you as always.
Oh,
It's always
you're so wonderful. You're so wonderful. You're so wonderful.
Caroline,
Thank you.
Caroline, hold on. Let me get this.
Thank you, Caroline. That was wonderful.
Yeah, you bet.
Before you leave,
Uh-huh.
we're going to take a picture of the crew and you.
Okay.
If you would love to do just
Yes.
that would be great.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because why is that's it. That's such a great one. Thanks everybody. I would love to. Thank you. I would love to know more about what you guys all. No, I'm Donna's friend. Oh, Donna's friend. Hi, Caroline. Hi, Caroline. I think I've met you. You're Bernadette? No, Barbara. Barbara. This is my best friend. Okay. And my father. You're an actress. So do you do stuff locally?
I've been directing more.
Oh, okay. Like with a theater company? I was directing Oh, okay.
Yes, that was awesome.
I'm a former actress. Yeah, no, I used to go out of town.
You know what I'd like to do is get a picture with two of us. Okay. And our crew and our star under.
Hi, Caroline. Hi, Simone. Yes, I'm so excited to watch this later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same. It's just stuff we were just reflecting on somebody else's conversation.
Oh, did y'all hear it?
And you're right there on the big screen, so it was cool. It was cool.
Okay.
I follow John?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna get you set up. Is it cold in here?
It is. No, it's.
And I didn't put it on as cold as I sometimes do. Why? Do you want it colder?
No, I'm just asking why would you want it cold?
Sometimes we have a lot more activity.
Okay.
little bit of moving around.
Yeah, musicians and
Oh, gotcha,
that
gotcha.
kind of thing. So, not that it's great for the instruments. Anyway, so I'm so happy to have you here.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here. I can't
Absolutely.
wait. Dennis would not tell me the story about how y'all met, and he said it's wonderful. So I get to. I
Here
get
for
to
the
hear
first
it.
time.
Yeah.
Well, do you have, speaking of coldness, do you have tissues I could, or I guess we go to the bathroom.
Toilet paper. I have some clean toilet paper right here that's me.
Okay, just because,
For real.
the boogers and things.
We have a monitor right there.
Uh-huh.
You
Oh, I
wanna
can
use it
check.
as your
That's my mirror.
Yeah. So go ahead. What we're gonna do is get light checked.
Okay.
As soon as Dennis comes in here, we're gonna get his checked again because he's changing clothes.
Right.
And John's gonna get you both set up on sound, and then he's gonna get the sound levels right.
Okay.
So you're gonna get to do some. I don't know if you were in here when we were doing the 1, 2, 3,
No,
4, 5.
no.
Okay. Well, you're gonna get to do some
do
of
some of
that.
that?
So
Cool.
yeah. So I know that you have some experience with TV, some interviews,
What?
right?
Oh, yeah.
In your basketball days,
yes,
for
yes,
sure.
yes.
I know
I was like,
'cause I saw
what?
some of it. Yeah.
I did.
So yeah, you did. So you're comfortable.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
okay.
great. I'm Simone.
Very good.
Hi, Susan.
Oh,
Nice to meet you, Susanna.
so these two are sophomores at Texas State, and
Cool.
they have agreed to
Congratulations.
help out here. So I hope y'all are on board for meeting more because this is very wonderful. Okay,
Cool
so
experience, yeah.
yeah,
So wherever
right
you need me,
there,
Jen.
right there, and Dennis will be there, and your dad.
He might go in the green. He liked that room back there where we
Okay.
were.
Okay. Cool. Oh,
You could run this up to your shirt somehow.
From the bottom.
Yep. And then we'll get it flipped up top.
Okay.
And
Here, maybe.
Probably more on the other side because you'll be leaning.
yeah, 'cause you'll be looking this way towards Dennis a little bit more.
Okay, do what you need to do.
okay. So
That's so cute.
Thank you.
we have it reserved.
Roses.
There,
Okay.
that should be perfect.
Cool.
And then that's pretty much all your mic setup we need to do. Now we'll do some lights with the detector.
No, she was raised in Round Rock. I'm actually
She goes, you're familiar with like interviewing and stuff. And I was like, I am? And she's like, yeah, like with your basketball stuff. I was like, oh.
That's right, I did.
Oh yeah, that was me. Yes. Okay.
Well, guess what color his shirt is?
Ah, I should have
And
known.
this is on purpose.
I should have
This
known.
is not an. This is not
Very
an
purposeful.
accident.
It has to
This
be.
is in your honor. This is in Hoosier
Well, I love it.
fashion, so
I
that
love
I
it.
would make sure that as I was reading your bio
Yes.
and your stats
Yeah.
and seeing the journey from your getting repair of the ACL and then getting those doubles and doing all the work that
Yeah. It's been neat. I did a little bit of research this morning for you, so I can have a couple of videos and pics ready for you.
would you please?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have them on. We'll do that on some of the B-roll. And
Okay.
listen, a couple of things that I want is that if I get into a subject or an area that you're not comfortable
Okay.
in or you don't want to talk about, just say, ask me about something else.
Okay.
Just say, come on, Dennis, ask
Yeah.
me about something else.
Yeah.
So because I'm very interested in. I've had a chance to interview Billie Jean and Martina and Chrissy and women's basketball was just starting back when the women's superstars back in the early 80s, and so I got a chance to interview that, and then I worked with, as I told you, Jan Lahudney, one of the great basketball coaches, and so they did. So I've been very interested in the women's basketball and how they've the evolution of that and so I'm
Well, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not. How is this? Is this an auto?
no this
I
is
think it is a little
yours.
bit.
That was
You need a new
I
ones.
have a fresh one for you
Perfect.
here.
Can I give you that one?
There
Thank
you are.
you.
Thank you.
I was just asking my dad about. So my grandmother played. She played back in the day.
Six man?
Yes, where only one person could cross the half court, right? And she is the biggest women's basketball fan that I've ever known. She would watch, and she knew
Yeah.
all the players. She would ask me about some of my teammates. She's like, "Where's that one?" You know, of course, she's gonna give, distinctive details.
Sure.
I'm like, yeah, Grandma, she's doing well, or she's so and so somewhere. And,
Sure.
but yeah, she would sit up and watch it, and we didn't like to miss games, and on TV, of course. And so I don't know, it was just
Are you
reflecting
sitting
on that with her.
how you're gonna sit?
Yep.
Okay. We're gonna do 1 through 10,
All right.
and I'll also make sure that this is off. I'll go ahead and chat.
Okay.
It was. It
Good.
started echoing,
Yeah, I heard a little,
but it
but
was
we're
down.
fine. All right, so you want us to count?
Yep.
Okay. What we're going to do is that we're each going to count, and then
Sorry if I ended up
just
kicking you.
I don't mind.
Okay.
Just pretend that you're blocking me at the post, and making sure, just really just
Just in
yeah,
position.
get out there and we'll work. I'm very, very friendly. All right, 1, 2, 3,
Okay, we do.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Normal voice.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's it. All right,
Beautiful.
there we go. And and Donald will come in and tell us when we're about to start. And we're I'm very much of an origin story person, so I want to talk about seeing you for the
Yes.
first time.
Yes,
Whenever
I
we have
hope
that,
so.
because that I think that's it's a story that it's really remarkable, Simone, because we're at a time in history when women are standing up around the world. It's happening.
Yes.
It's happening. It's happening in Eastern Europe. It's happening in Asia. It's happening in China, where they don't even. I mean, and when you have when you have women and men at the table, we make different decisions
Yes, we do.
than when we only have men. And in my journey, being a white man in this culture, seeing how limited our experiences
Right.
and how that limits our ability to make better decisions.
It boxes us in. It keeps us sheltered and protected to an extent, right?
Yeah.
Then there's no growth. There's no room to explore. It's
Were
really
you
sad.
interested in the humanities at Indiana? What did you study?
Human development and human development and family studies. That's what the degree was. So from birth to death
Wow.
was were my my lessons, and it's so interesting how it's very, if not more, significant now that I have had that background.
Isn't it amazing that we're seeing? I mean, I'm wondering how, when I think about what was the impetus for us to go from our of evolution. How did we get to the hominid? How did we get to the Homo habilis? And what was this impetus that had evolution? You know, as you look through the mammals, as the mammals began to evolve, and then what does it work? So if we as humans were having that impetus, that there was within us, that there was this something, that there was an evolutionary thrust,
Right.
how would we know it?
I guess time and space. I think reflecting back and being cognizant and being aware of each moment as we pass through.
Yeah.
We just sat in the car and cried to the point of tears, reflecting on 2014.
One of the things that we have not done, we should have, is talk about colors.
Yes.
We're getting like a real bright.
Oh, no, for my shirt?
Yeah, it'll be okay.
Okay.
But ideally, I wonder if you would mind seeing if this works.
Wearing
for
on top, over the top?
you. I don't know. Let's see. Let's just see.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little shawl. I
Just
think
to kind of
it should
distract.
work. I mean, it's the cameras.
Okay.
It actually, your shirt looks wonderful. It's just, how does that fit?
It's okay.
How does that fit?
Does it, will
How does it look?
mess with the mic? Oh, let me fix that part.
Can you ramp down the iris a little bit on the
Yeah.
instead? I lose too much of.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Yeah,
my
exactly.
hair.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason,
Yeah.
but it's the white,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to have the best shot.
Sure. So how?
How it?
No, I'm trying to think. How can your?
Oh, we're working it.
Yeah.
I have a kind of pink jacket in the car with that.
You?
Yeah.
Would you want me to ask your dad to get it?
No, I can grab it.
Okay.
Yeah, we were
Oh,
hooked
well,
up to
yeah,
a
I've been
mic.
asking you. Yes,
You're
please.
wired.
Okay.
You're,
Right.
you're, you're,
Are,
wi-
are you sure? Are you good with it on with your?
Yeah, I think it'll look nice.
Cool. I heard that. Okay. All right.
Good.
I have a little. I didn't even think about that. You said color, and I was when you asked me on the other day, like what I was gonna wear, and I didn't even think. Like it just depends on this weather.
Yeah.
I think I have just thin skin naturally, and I
Yep.
don't have a lot of weight on me, so the cold
Yep.
really can get to me sometimes. So I have to like extra layer. But I didn't.
And there you are in Indiana.
And there I am. And so it's interesting when I came back, people were like, you should be used to this cold. You lived 4 years. It's not the same. It is not the same.
No.
There's not this wind chill that pierces through my ankles when they're exposed. You know, it's just different. But
And
Yeah.
when you worked through your injury, your ACL,
I had two
Two?
ACL in high school, ACL in college, and then the MCL. I was on the other knee in Germany.
did you wear a brace then? In
I just
in the
had
games?
sleeves.
did it help? Did it help?
The purpose of the sleeve for me, at least, because I didn't have one of those big industrial like clip-on.
Right.
I never was at that level, but I did have a sleeve, and what it was to just keep the blood around my knee moving and active.
Perfect.
Okay.
Really perfect.
Guess where I got it, Dennis?
Where?
Kohl's.
Kohl's. There you
Get
go.
that discount.
I have to leave because Dennis, I have to leave so we can chat.
Bye, Barbara. Thank you for coming.
lovely to
Thank
meet
you for
you.
coming.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for helping us out today. Okay, let's see. It's my
Oh, that is lovely.
my detective. I think I might have to connect it to my jacket, maybe, just so
No.
it's not
Uh,
pulling on my shirt.
yeah. There you go.
Is that better?
That got it.
Ooh.
Ooh, that looks good.
I keep telling them they need to hire me as a spokeswoman.
Yeah.
I wear all their clothes. Okay.
Did you, your brother is a photographer, right?
He does photography, yes.
Right. Did he grab you as a model? Did
Yeah,
he say, did he say, hey, come on now, my sister looks like this, I've got to use you. I got to use you as a model.
He chooses not to, but I did have him do some professional shots for me, and we had a great time. It was just us being silly, and so we got some good stuff. But no, you would think, right?
Yeah, I know. What are you doing? But it's one of these cobbler's sons wears no shoes, and besides, he's your brother.
Right.
And he's your brother. Is he your little brother or your big brother?
We're 2 years apart.
Oh well, see now that's even more. Yeah.
Yeah. He just sees me as sister. It's so interesting because even into adulthood, there's still this playful like relationship that we have.
Yeah.
To where we can go couple weeks without really catching up with one another, but when we're in each other's presence, it's like we have to beat up on each other. I have to make sure he knows that I'm still the boss, right?
That's right.
So I'll sock him real
But
good.
you were
Right.
for many years. I mean,
Yes.
that 4 and that 6-year-old, that 8 and that 6.
what we
I mean,
were.
you went through the times
Yeah, absolutely.
together as you got a chance. His name's Ronald.
Sydney.
Sydney.
Yeah, he follows us, my dad's name.
God, all right, so he's Sydney.
They love to tell me, the family loves to tell me when he was born, we all gathered around
Yes.
the bedside of my mom. And the first thing out of my mouth was, little baby, get off my mama. but then I say that, but then I go and sit with him, and I don't want to let anybody else, he's
Yep.
mine now, right?
Yeah.
It's this weird possessive thing kids do.
We have a few things. First of all, y'all need to move just like the tiniest bit together.
Closer?
Okay, it's perfect.
It's probably good. And
Yeah,
this needs to be a little,
fix
if
it.
it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Even if you want, do you want to put it on the jacket?
Oh, I think this is okay. It's just,
Saggy.
sorry. Yeah, I think it's just because this is heavy and it's like, can I put this behind you?
Oh, yeah.
That way it won't pull here.
And then we were wondering if you could turn your phones to airplane, if it's possible, because we're noticing some interference, like electronic interference.
Got it, I'll turn mine off.
Yeah, I'll go do that. Oh, actually, I can't. It's in, it's.
Here.
Okay.
Oh, my hand just comes out of nowhere.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Okay, tell Donna I turned mine off too.
Okay. I think that's good.
What a cool team.
I know.
So they're interns with the university down the street. So was it that you guys advertise the additional help, or do they kind of do their program?
I have to ask Donna.
Mm-hmm.
That's Donna's.
So this is Donna's thing.
This is Donna's
just
show.
there, yeah.
I just show up.
Yeah.
I show up, but no, she's the producer,
Yeah.
and does all the, thank God, does the work. We started the show in 1979.